The leather wallet felt heavy in her hands, stuffed with more cash than she had ever seen. $50,000, enough to solve everything. Her rent, her debts, the reason she had just been fired an hour ago. Every person on the crowded street walked past, unaware. She could slip it into her bag and vanish, but she didn't. Her name was Maria Santos, fired that morning from her cleaning job at the prestigious Avalon Suites, her final paycheck already swallowed by overdue bills. The wallet's owner, according to the driver's license, was Lucas Thorne, the founder of a billion-dollar tech empire. Returning it meant a long, humbling walk across a city that had just rejected her. But that single decision, to act with integrity when no one was watching, was about to trigger a chain of events no one could have written. The city had always been a series of closed doors. For Maria Santos, that morning's final dismissal at the Avalon was just another one slamming shut. The manager's words were crisp, corporate, budget restructuring. But the meaning was ancient: you are expendable. Her uniform, a stiff white blouse and dark skirt, felt like a costume for a role that no longer existed. She stepped out into the mid-morning glare with a single cardboard box holding a photo of her son, Carlos, and a half-used Metro card. The $73 in her bank account was a ticking clock. She walked without direction, the heat of the pavement rising through her thin-soled shoes. Each step replayed the argument from the night before, her sister's strained voice over the phone. The rent on their cramped apartment was 15 days late. Carlos needed new school shoes. The math never worked, and now, with her job gone, the numbers dissolved into pure panic. She turned a corner onto a quieter, tree-lined street in the financial district, a world of polished glass and silent money. That's when she saw it, a splash of brown leather against the gray curb. At first, she thought it was a discarded bag, but as she neared, the shape resolved into a men's wallet, thick, expensive. She picked it up, a reflex. It felt weighty, substantial. Her thumb brushed the clasp. It sprung open. The cash was a shock of green, banded in neat thousands, 50s and hundreds. She didn't need to count it to know the amount on the driver's license was a gross underestimate. Lucas Thorne. The address was a tower she'd seen in magazine spreads, the headquarters of Ethelgard Solutions. A man who moved markets lived here, in her hand. For a full minute, the world narrowed to that leather rectangle. The noise of the city faded. Here was the solution to every closed door: a year's rent, medical bills for her aging mother, security. No one had seen her. She could walk to a bank, deposit it in chunks, invent a story. The temptation wasn't a whisper, it was a roar vibrating in her chest. This is what the research tells us happens in the mind at this exact moment. A global study published in the journal *Science found that when people find lost wallets, a strange psychological shift occurs. The more money inside, the more likely they are to return it. It defies pure logic. Why? Because keeping a small amount lets you pretend it's a finder's fee. Keeping $50,000 makes you a thief, and most people cannot bear to see themselves that way. Maria's hand trembled. She wasn't most people. She was a woman with a son watching the clock. She could be a thief for him. She started to slide the wallet into her box. Then she saw the other card, tucked behind the license. A photograph worn at the edges. A young boy, maybe 8, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, perched on the shoulders of a man who could only be Lucas Thorne, smiling in a way the corporate headshots never captured. A father, not just a CEO. Her breath hitched. She thought of Carlos, of what she wanted him to learn about the world, about his mother. Dignity, she had learned long ago, was not something you had when times were good. It was what you clung to when they were impossible. She closed the wallet with a snap that felt decisive. She would return it. The journey was a pilgrimage through the city's layers, from the quiet money of the financial district, across the bustling bridge, into the dense, noisy heart of downtown, and finally toward the gleaming spires of the North Point Business Park where Ethelgard stood. She walked for over 2 hours, her feet blistered. The box grew heavy. Each block was a debate. Each time she passed a check-cashing store or a bank, the roar of temptation would rise again, and she would clutch the wallet tighter, as if physically holding her resolve. She arrived as the afternoon sun glinted off the tower's blue glass face. The lobby was a cathedral of cold marble. Her reflection in the polished walls showed a woman out of place, rumpled uniform, frizzing hair, a cardboard box. She approached the vast security desk. Two guards in crisp uniforms watched her, their expressions neutral, assessing. "I need to see Lucas Thorne," Maria said, her voice smaller than she intended. One guard, a tall man with a bored gaze, didn't even look up from his monitor. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I found his wallet. I have it here." She held it up. The guard's eyes flicked to it, then to her, then back to his screen. "You can leave it with me. I'll ensure it gets to his office." Something in his tone, the dismissive ease, set off a warning. This wallet had traveled too far in her hands to be left on a desk. "I'd prefer to give it to him personally, or to his assistant. It's important." The second guard, younger, shifted his weight. "Ma'am, Mr. Thorne is in a board meeting that's been going on since 9 this morning. It's a critical day. You can't just go up." The tension in the lobby was palpable, even from the staff behind the receptionist's desk. Phones rang with a hushed urgency. Maria stood her ground, the wallet her only credential. "Please, just call his office. Tell him Maria Santos is here with his property." The first guard sighed, as if burdened by her persistence, and picked up a phone. He spoke in low tones. "Yeah, send her up." He hung up and nodded toward the bank of elevators. "Penthouse suite. They're expecting you." The elevator ride was a silent ascent through the spine of power. The doors opened not into a hallway, but directly into a serene, spacious anteroom. A woman with a severe blonde bob and a headset looked up from her desk. "Miss Santos, I'm Alina, Mr. Thorne's executive assistant. He's still in session, but he's been informed. You can wait." The waiting area was all soft leather and modern art. Maria perched on the edge of a chair, the cardboard box on her lap, feeling the immense, quiet pressure of wealth. Through a partially open door to a conference room, she could hear the low murmur of agitated voices. One voice, deep and commanding, cut through: "Lucas Thorne. The projections are unacceptable. If the merger vote fails today, we're looking at a hostile scenario by quarter's end. I need assurances." A board meeting, a merger vote. Her timing, she realized, could not be worse. After 20 minutes, the conference room door opened. Men and women in impeccable suits filed out, faces grim, barely glancing at the maid in the waiting area. Finally, he emerged. Lucas Thorne was taller in person, his silver-templed hair a stark contrast to his sharp, tired eyes. He carried a tension that seemed to warp the air around him. He looked at Alina, then his gaze landed on Maria. Alina stepped forward. "Sir, this is Maria Santos. She found your wallet." Thorne approached slowly. His eyes were not grateful, but analytical, suspicious. He took the wallet from her outstretched hand. He didn't open it. He simply weighed it in his palm, his eyes locked on hers. "Where did you find this?" "On Elm Street, near the park, by the curb." "And you came all the way here?" It wasn't a question, it was an evaluation. "Yes, sir." He finally opened the wallet, his gaze dropping to the contents. He flipped through the cash, not counting, just confirming its presence. Then he saw the photograph. His thumb brushed over it, a fleeting, unguarded moment. His jaw tightened. When he looked back at her, the suspicion had hardened into something colder. "This was a significant amount of money to return," he stated. Maria felt a chill. This wasn't going how the stories said it would. It was the right thing to do. "Most people would think the right thing was to keep it," he said, his voice low, "especially someone who looks like they could use it." His eyes traveled pointedly from her worn shoes to her uniform to the cardboard box. "You were fired today." The bluntness was a slap. "Yes. From the Avalon Suites. I was a housekeeper." Thorne nodded slowly, as if pieces were clicking into a puzzle he didn't like. He glanced at Alina, a silent communication passing between them. Then he looked back at Maria. "I need to verify something. The contents of this wallet were specific. You'll understand the need for discretion." He turned and walked back toward his open office door, not inviting her, but expecting her to follow. Maria stood, confused, a cold knot forming in her stomach. The heroic return was curdling into an interrogation. She followed him into the vast, minimalist office. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city sprawling below. He walked to his desk, placed the wallet down, and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Before we proceed, Ms. Santos, I have to ask one more time. Did you take anything from this wallet? Anything at all? The accusation, politely veiled, hung in the sterile air. The cliffhanger wasn't about a reward. It was about whether her act of honesty was about to be treated as a crime. The question wasn't just an inquiry, it was a trap. Maria stared at Lucas Thorne, the city glittering silently behind him like a backdrop to her impending ruin. Her voice, when it came, was a frayed thread. No, I didn't take anything. Thorne held her gaze for a beat too long, then gave a single, curt nod to Alina, who had appeared silently in the doorway. Close the door, please, he said. The soft click of the latch was the sound of the world shrinking. He finally opened the wallet fully, methodically emptying its contents onto the polished steel of his desk. The cash, the cards, the photograph. Then he turned the wallet inside out, pressing a hidden seam. A small, flat data card, no larger than a fingernail, slid into his palm. He held it up to the light. This, he said, his voice low and tense, is why I was concerned. This proprietary drive contains the final algorithm models for the Ethelgard-Praxon merger. Its absence would have invalidated the entire board vote that just concluded. A vote, I might add, that failed. Maria's mind raced, trying to catch up. This wasn't about money, it was about corporate war. I didn't see that, I didn't even know it was there. Precisely, Thorne said, his eyes sharp. Most people wouldn't, which is why its disappearance would have pointed to a very specific kind of theft. Industrial espionage, not a crime of opportunity, but of intent. He leaned forward, resting his knuckles on the desk. So you can understand my dilemma, Ms. Santos. You return a wallet containing $50,000 in untraceable cash, but the one item of actual irreplaceable value to my company is missing. Then you show up at my office, on the most critical day of the fiscal year, dressed as a recently fired employee with nothing to lose. What am I to think? The accusation was now explicit, woven into a logic that felt airtight. Maria felt the walls of the magnificent office pressing in. She had walked into a narrative she didn't understand, cast as the villain in a story she never auditioned for. I found it on the street, she repeated, desperation seeping in. That's all. Thorne studied her, not with anger, but with the cold calculation of a chess player. The human psychology of honesty is fascinating, he said, almost to himself. The global study in science you invoked earlier, it found people return wallets with more money because of self-image, but it also found a baseline rate of dishonesty. About 28% of people, even with large sums, will still keep the wallet. You are either in the remarkable 72%, or you are part of a more sophisticated and dangerous minority. He picked up his phone, pressed a button, "Send up security, please, and have them bring a scanner." Maria's heart hammered against her ribs. What are you doing? Establishing facts, Thorne replied, his tone chillingly neutral. If that data card was accessed, it will show on the embedded log. If it was copied, there will be a trace. And if you are, as you claim, an innocent finder, then this process will exonerate you. He paused, his gaze unwavering. But if you are lying, you will be in police custody within the hour. Theft of intellectual property at this level carries a minimum sentence of 5 years. The numbers hung in the air, more terrifying than any dollar amount. 5 years. Carlos would be a teenager by the time she got out. Her life, already fragile, would be obliterated. 2 security guards entered, different from the ones downstairs. These men moved with a quiet, tactical precision. One carried a sleek, handheld device. Thorne handed him the data card. The room was silent except for the soft whir of the scanner. A light on the device glowed red, then flickered through a sequence. Maria watched, her fate spinning in the tiny machine. The guard looked at the readout, then at Thorne. "Sir, last access was logged at 8:42 this morning. Read only, no copy commands initiated, no external device pairing." Thorne's rigid posture softened, almost imperceptibly. The suspicion in his eyes didn't vanish, but it mutated into something else, confusion. He dismissed the guards with a wave. The door closed again, leaving the 2 of them in a new, heavier silence. "So," he said slowly, "you didn't access it, and you returned the cash." He sank into his chair, the commanding CEO replaced, for a moment, by a man wrestling with a flawed equation. Why, with your circumstances, the logical choice was to take the money and disappear. The data card was invisible. You could have had it all risk-free. Maria, emboldened by the scanner's verdict, found a sliver of her voice. Maybe logic isn't the only thing that matters. She looked at the photograph of the boy, now lying on the steel desk. Maybe some things are more important than money. Thorne followed her gaze to the picture of his son, Leo. His jaw tightened. That photograph was his vulnerability, a piece of his private self he carried everywhere. This woman had seen it, had held it, and had chosen to bring it back to him. The intercom on his desk buzzed. Elena's voice, strained, cut through. "Sir, Mr. Vance from Praxon is on line 1. He's demanding to speak to you immediately about the vote." Thorne closed his eyes for a second, pinching the bridge of his nose. The pressure of the corporate world was crashing back in. The merger was failing. His company was vulnerable. And in the middle of it sat a mystery named Maria Santos. He made a decision. "Tell Vance I'll call him back in 20 minutes. He released the intercom and looked at Maria. "You're not leaving yet." "I answered your questions. The scanner cleared me." "It cleared you of one thing," Thorne corrected. "It didn't explain the coincidence. My wallet goes missing on the morning of the most important vote of my career. It is found and returned by a woman in desperate financial straits, but the act itself makes no financial sense. In my world, Ms. Santos, actions that defy logic usually have a deeper, hidden logic. I need to understand yours." He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "I lost that wallet between my car and a coffee shop on Elm Street at approximately 8:15 a.m. The area is under continuous surveillance. My security team is currently pulling the footage. They will see who dropped it, who picked it up, and every moment in between. If your story holds, you will be compensated for your time and integrity. But if there is a single discrepancy..." He left the threat unfinished. Maria felt a new kind of exhaustion, one that went deeper than blistered feet. She was trapped in a gilded cage, her honesty having brought her not freedom, but a more intense scrutiny. She thought of Carlos, waiting for her after school, unaware his mother was undergoing a corporate interrogation. 15 minutes later, Elena entered again, this time with a tablet. She handed it to Thorne without a word. He watched the screen, his expression impassive. Maria watched his face, searching for a clue. He replayed a segment, then another. Finally, he lowered the tablet. "The footage is conclusive," he announced, his voice devoid of its earlier edge. "You can see it for yourself." He turned the tablet toward her. On the screen, in grainy black and white, was the street corner. A black town car idled. Thorne himself, unmistakable in his tailored suit, got out, patted his pocket distractedly, and walked into a coffee shop. As he did, the wallet slipped from his jacket and landed on the curb. He didn't notice. The car drove off. For over an hour, the wallet lay there. Dozens of people walked past, a woman talking on her phone, a jogger, a businessman who actually paused, looked down, then stepped over it. Then Maria entered the frame. She was walking slowly, head down, carrying her cardboard box. She almost passed it, then stopped. She bent, picked it up, opened it. The camera captured the clear shock on her face as she saw the cash. She looked around, a rapid, guilty scan. She clutched it to her chest, hesitated for a full 30 seconds, the internal battle visible in her stiff posture. Then she squared her shoulders, closed the wallet, and began her long walk away from the camera toward the heart of the city. Thorne took the tablet back. "You hesitated," he stated. "Of course I hesitated," Maria fired back, a flash of defiance breaking through her fear. "It was more money than I'd ever seen. I'm human." "That's what the footage confirms," Thorne said, and for the first time there was no suspicion in his tone. It was something closer to respect. "You are human, you were tempted, and you chose to do the harder thing. The footage also shows no one else approached the wallet. No handoff, no signal. You acted alone." The revelation should have brought relief, but a new tension was coiling in the room. Thorne was looking at her not as a suspect, but as a puzzle piece that had suddenly clicked into a larger, more alarming picture. "If you didn't take the wallet as part of a plot," he reasoned aloud, packing slowly, "and my own carelessness caused its loss, then its disappearance was random. An accident, but its return, today of all days, is a statistical anomaly of incredible magnitude." He stopped and faced her. "Do you know what today is, Ms. Santos?" "The day your merger vote failed." Because the vote was tied, one vote shy, My vote as the largest shareholder was the tiebreaker. I was absent from the boardroom for 17 minutes this morning because I was frantic, turning my car and office upside down looking for this. He pointed to the data card. Without it, I could not in good faith cast the final vote. I abstained. The merger failed by 1 vote. My absence, caused by a lost wallet, cost my company a $3 billion deal. The scale of it was incomprehensible. Her act of walking across the city hadn't just returned a wallet. It had inadvertently toppled a corporate giant's plan. The stakes were no longer personal, they were planetary in the world of high finance. And now, Thorne continued, his voice dropping, Praxon's CEO, a man named Silas Vance, believes I sabotaged the deal intentionally. He thinks this was a power play. He is not a man who accepts defeat gracefully. He retaliates. Thorne walked back to his desk, his mind clearly racing down darker paths. If he were to discover that the instrument of my sabotage was a lost wallet returned by a cleaner, he trailed off, the implications clear. Maria was no longer just a good Samaritan. She was a loose end in a billion-dollar game, and loose ends in Silas Vance's world were dealt with. Thorne's phone rang again. He glanced at it, his face hardening. It's Vance again. He let it go to voicemail, but the silent vibrating phone was like a ticking bomb. He looked at Maria, a decision crystallizing in his eyes. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a cold, protective calculus. You can't go back to your life, Ms. Santos. Not yet. What do you mean? Silas Vance has resources. If he digs, and he will dig, he will find the security footage. He will find you, and he will assume you are part of a scheme, either mine or a competitor's. He will pressure you, threaten you, or worse, to get a statement that implicates me. Your honesty has placed you in the crosshairs of a very dangerous man. Maria felt the floor drop away. Returning, the wallet was supposed to be the end of a bad day, not the beginning of a nightmare. So what do I do? Thorne sat down, steepling his fingers. For now, you stay here. In this building, we have secure accommodation suites. You will be safe. I need time to contain this, to construct a narrative for Vance that doesn't involve you. He paused, then added, and I need to make amends for my earlier interrogation. You acted with integrity in a moment of profound personal crisis. That is a rare quality, one my company is in desperate need of. He pressed a button. Elena, please prepare the executive suite on 42 for Ms. Santos and cancel my remaining afternoon appointments. He turned back to Maria. We have much to discuss, starting with what happens tomorrow. The executive suite on the 42nd floor was a gilded cage. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking, dizzying view of the city Maria could no longer touch. A cold luxury surrounded her, a minimalist sofa, a kitchenette stocked with untouched food, a bedroom with sheets too crisp. Her cardboard box sat on a marble counter, a stark reminder of the reality waiting outside. Lucas Thorne had provided safety, but at the cost of her freedom. He had left her with a final, unsettling instruction: do not contact anyone, not yet. But as night fell, the silence became unbearable. Carlos would be with her sister, worried. She had to call. She found a landline phone in the bedroom. Her fingers trembled as she dialed her sister's number. It rang once, twice, then connected. But the voice that answered wasn't her sister. Ms. Santos. The voice was a smooth, cultured baritone, utterly unfamiliar. We've been waiting for your call. Maria's blood ran cold. Who is this? Where's my sister? Your family is perfectly safe. For now, this is Silas Vance. I believe you have something that belongs to me. The name hit her like a physical blow. Thorne's warning had been terrifyingly precise. Vance had found them, and he had done it in less than 6 hours. I don't have anything of yours. Don't be modest, Vance purred. You have Lucas Thorne's attention, and you have a story, the story of a lost wallet. I want you to tell that story to me, and then I want you to tell it to the financial press. Maria's mind raced. Why? Because the narrative matters, Vance said, his tone turning icy. Right now, the world thinks Thorne sabotaged our merger for his own gain, a ruthless power play. But if the world learns he's so careless, he loses critical data in the street, and so weak he's saved by a cleaning lady, his credibility shatters. The board will turn on him. His stock will plummet, and I will pick up the pieces for pennies. You will be the instrument of his destruction. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it left her breathless. They weren't just pieces on a board, they were weapons. And if I refuse? A soft, humorless chuckle came through the line. Your son, Carlos, is in Mrs. Alvaro's third-grade class. He likes peanut butter sandwiches and thinks his mother is the strongest person in the world. He's wrong, of course, but I'd hate for him to learn that lesson in a dramatic way. Do we understand each other? The threat was explicit, visceral. He knew Carlos's teacher, he knew his lunch. He was already inside the walls of her life. Maria felt a primal fear, colder and deeper than any financial worry. What do you want me to do? Stay where you are, be ready. My people will contact you at Thorne's office tomorrow with a statement. You will read it on camera, do this, and you will be compensated. Generously, your money troubles will be over, refuse, and the consequences will extend far beyond you. The line went dead. Maria stood frozen, the dial tone buzzing in her ear like a trapped insect. Vance's offer was a diabolical choice: betray Thorne and secure her family's future, or protect him and paint a target on her son's back. The honest choice had vanished. Now there were only bad ones. Downstairs, in his office, Lucas Thorne was facing his own siege. His screen was a grid of anxious faces, his remaining loyal board members. The rumors are already flying, Lucas, one said. Vance is telling everyone you engineered the vote failure to depress our stock before a buyback. It's a lie, Thorne growled. Perception is reality, another board member countered. We need a counter-narrative. Now, where is this woman, the finder? She is secure, Thorne said, evading. We need to speak with her. If her story is clean, we go public with it first. Human interest. CEO saved by honest citizen. It blunts Vance's attack. Thorne knew they were right, but the thought of exposing Maria to the board's scrutiny and by extension to Vance felt like a betrayal. He had put her in danger. A new resolve hardened within him. He would not let Vance win by turning her into a pawn. He ended the call and summoned Elena. I need everything on Silas Vance's movements for the past 72 hours. Every meeting, every call log you can acquire. And I need a secure, private line to my son's security detail at his boarding school. Now. While Elena worked, Thorne did something he hadn't done in years. He opened a locked drawer in his desk and pulled out a simple, framed photograph of a construction site, a younger version of himself standing beside a beaming man in a hard hat. The man was Maria's father, Eduardo Santos. Thorne had never mentioned it to Maria. Their connection wasn't a coincidence he was ready to explain, because the truth was a grenade from his past. Eduardo Santos had been the foreman on Thorne's first major development, a man whose integrity had saved the project from a costly safety violation Thorne had almost overlooked. Thorne had promised to look out for Eduardo's family, a promise made in gratitude and forgotten in the rush of empire building. Until today, when a Santos walked back into his life, carrying his own failure. This changed everything. This wasn't just about protecting an honest stranger. This was about honoring a debt. Elena interrupted his thoughts, her face pale. Sir, the preliminary report on Vance. He received a call from a blocked number 40 minutes ago. The call was routed through a cell tower less than a mile from your son's school, and we just intercepted an external security ping. Someone attempted to access the building's guest registry for today. The query was for Santos. It was traced to a server registered to a Vance subsidiary. Vance wasn't just making threats. He was actively hunting, probing for weaknesses, and he had found two, Leo at his school and Maria in the guest registry. The battle was no longer corporate, it was personal. Thorne made a decision. He rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. He found Maria standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the lights of the neighborhood where her son slept, unaware of the danger circling him. He called you, Thorne stated, seeing the answer in her posture. Maria nodded, not turning around. He has my sister's phone. He knows Carlos's teacher. He wants me to ruin you publicly tomorrow. Thorne's jaw tightened. And what did you tell him? I told him I'd listen. She finally turned, her eyes raw with fear and defiance. To buy time, what are you going to do? You can't keep me in this tower forever. I'm not going to keep you here, Thorne said, his voice low and intent. "I'm going to bring the fight to him, but I can't do it without you, and you cannot do it without protection for your son." Maria shook her head. "How? You said yourself Vance has resources." "Resources can be countered," Thorne said, "but it requires a gamble, a very public one. Vance wants a story, we'll give him a story, but not the one he's writing." He stepped closer. "Maria, the man who threatened your son built his fortune on fraud, on stealing ideas, on crushing small competitors. He's a predator, and he thinks you're prey. He thinks I'm a careless fool. We are going to show him he is wrong on all counts." "How?" "By turning your act of honesty into a weapon," Thorne said. "We go public first, but not with a story about a lost wallet, with a story about a found family and a new initiative." He paused, letting the idea take shape. "Ethelgard Solutions will announce the launch of the Integrity Fellowship, a full-ride scholarship and mentorship program for children of service workers who demonstrate exceptional character. The first beneficiary will be your son, Carlos. The founding story will be yours. We will put you and your integrity in the spotlight so bright that Vance cannot touch you without the whole world watching." It was a breathtaking pivot, from hidden target to public figure, from vulnerable to protected, but Maria saw the flaw immediately. "It's a publicity stunt. You're using me." "I'm offering you a shield," Thorne countered fiercely, "and a future for your son. Yes, it helps my company's image, but it also gives you a platform, legitimacy, and a reason for the media to be invested in your safety. Vance can threaten a cleaning lady in the shadows. It's much harder to threaten the public face of a major corporate philanthropy campaign." He could see her wrestling with it, the distrust of grand gestures warring with the desperate need for a solution. "There's something else," Thorne said, his tone shifting. He gestured to the sofa. "Please sit." He took a breath, unlocking a part of his history he kept sealed. "You asked me earlier why I was so suspicious. It wasn't just the data card. It was you, your name, Santos." He picked up the remote, turning on a large screen, and brought up the old construction site photo. "Do you recognize this man?" Maria leaned forward, squinting, the man in the hard hat, grinning beside a younger Thorne, the eyes, the smile, her breath caught. That's my father, Eduardo. He was the foreman on my first project," Thorne said, his voice thick with a regret he rarely allowed himself. "A man of profound honesty. He caught a structural flaw the engineers missed, saved the project, saved lives, saved me from professional ruin. I told him I would never forget what he did, that I would look out for his family." He met Maria's shocked gaze. "I failed. I got busy. I forgot the promise." And today, his daughter walks back into my life, returning my own failure to me, literally and figuratively. This isn't a coincidence, Maria. This is a reckoning. The revelation reframed everything. His initial hostility, his intense scrutiny, his sudden protective shift, it was all rooted in a guilty conscience 20 years old. Maria felt a storm of emotions, anger at his neglect, a strange sorrow for her father, and a flicker of understanding. "So this," she said, waving a hand at the suite, "the promised fellowship, is guilt." "It's a second chance," Thorne replied, "to honor a good man's memory, to protect his family, and to finally do the right thing. Will you help me?" Before she could answer, Elena's voice came over the suite's intercom, urgent and tense. "Sir, you need to see this. Now it's live." Thorne activated the screen, switching to a 24-hour financial news network. A stark headline filled the screen. "WHASTLEBLOWER alleges security fraud ATHELGARD." The chyron below read, "Source claims CEO Lucas Thorne faked data loss to sink Praxon merger." The footage cut to a press conference. Standing at a microphone, flanked by lawyers, was a man Thorne recognized instantly, a mid-level data security manager at Ethelgard named David Royce. A man who reported to Silas Vance's recently hired chief information officer. Royce was speaking to a forest of microphones. "Can confirm that the so-called lost proprietary data was never outside the company's secure servers. The narrative of a lost wallet and a heroic return is a fabrication, orchestrated to cover for Mr. Thorne's illegal market manipulation." It was a masterstroke. Vance had moved first. He had produced a false whistleblower from within Thorne's own company to preemptively discredit Maria's story before she could even tell it. Her truth was now framed as a lie. Her integrity was being used as the setting for a corporate crime. Maria stared at the screen, the last hope of a simple resolution evaporating. He just destroyed my shield before you could even build it. Thorne's face was stone, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. No, he said, his voice quiet and dangerous. He just showed us his play. He thinks he's checkmated us. He thinks we'll run, but he's forgotten the one thing he can't fabricate. He turned to Maria, a real person with a real story. We don't run, we go louder. We don't just announce a fellowship. We sue Silas Vance for defamation, conspiracy, and unlawful intimidation. And you, Maria Santos, will be the lead plaintiff. It's time to step out of the shadows and into the fight. Going public as a plaintiff in a billion-dollar defamation case is not a quiet process. The next 72 hours were a controlled explosion of light, sound, and legal motion. Lucas Thorne's legal team, a group known for their ruthlessness in corporate battles, filed a lawsuit against Silas Vance and Praxon Industries that was 120 pages of blistering accusation, defamation, tortious interference, conspiracy, and unlawful intimidation. At the heart of the filing was the sworn affidavit of Maria Santos, detailing the return of the wallet and the subsequent threat from Vance. It was a declaration of war, and the court of public opinion was the first battlefield. Thorne and Maria held a joint press conference in the Ethelgard auditorium. Maria stood at the podium, flanked by Thorne and her newly appointed counsel. She wore a simple, elegant dress provided by the company, a stark contrast to the rumpled uniform of 3 days prior. Cameras flashed like silent lightning. She told her story, from finding the wallet to the call from Vance. She did not embellish. She did not waver. She spoke of her father, Eduardo, and the forgotten promise. She announced the Eduardo Santos Integrity Fellowship in his memory, and she looked directly into the lens and stated, "I returned the wallet because it was the right thing to do. I am standing here today because it is the right thing to do. I will not be silenced by bullying." The effect was seismic. The human interest angle was undeniable. News outlets that had been parroting Vance's whistleblower narrative now scrambled to cover the Maid versus Mogul story. The security footage of Maria finding the wallet was released by Thorne's team, a masterstroke of transparency. The video of her hesitation, her decision, and her long walk went viral. It was raw, authentic, and it completely undermined Vance's claim of a fabricated tale. Vance retaliated through his puppet, David Royce, who gave another press conference doubling down on the fraud allegations. But this time, the questions from reporters were hostile. If the data was never lost, how do you explain this footage? Can you explain your financial ties to Silas Vance? Royce faltered, his rehearsed lines crumbling under the weight of a simpler, more believable story. Behind the scenes, the legal machinery ground with brutal efficiency. Thorne's lawyers subpoenaed Vance's phone records, which revealed the call to Maria's sister's phone and the query to the Ethelgard guest registry. They also uncovered a series of encrypted payments from a Vance shell company to David Royce, dated asterisk after the merger vote failed. The narrative of a bought whistleblower began to solidify. But Vance was not without resources. He countersued for frivolous litigation and business disparagement. He leaned on his contacts in regulatory agencies, prompting a sudden and highly publicized inquiry by the Securities and Exchange Commission into Ethelgard's conduct around the merger vote. The stock of both companies gyrated wildly. The stakes were no longer just reputational, they were existential. For Maria, the storm was both terrifying and surreal. She and Carlos were moved into a secure, discreet apartment with private security, paid for by Thorne. Carlos was confused but excited by the adventure. Maria's sister was given a temporary leave from her job and relocated to be with them. The fellowship was officially launched, with $1 million endowment from Thorne personally. Applications from children of service workers poured in by the thousands. Maria was named the program's first community director, a salaried position that came with a comprehensive benefits package. The life-changing offer had been made, but it was buried under an avalanche of depositions and media scrutiny. The turning point came not in a courtroom, but in a conference room. The SEC investigation, initially a weapon for Vance, backfired spectacularly. In their deep dive into the merger communications, regulators uncovered a trail of deleted emails from Praxon's servers. Forensic technicians recovered them. The emails showed Vance explicitly instructing his team to create leverage against Thorne in the days leading up to the vote and to exploit any vulnerability, personal or professional. One email, sent the morning of the vote, read, "If Thorne falters, be ready with narrative control. Have a fall guy inside Ethelgard prepped." It was a smoking gun. The whistleblower was not exposing fraud. He was part of a conspiracy to commit it. The SEC shifted its focus from Ethelgard to Praxon and Silas Vance. Facing the collapse of his narrative and the prospect of criminal charges, Vance's board of directors turned on him. In a desperate bid to save the company, they voted to remove him as CEO and immediately opened settlement talks with Thorne. The legal walls were closing in. The settlement was announced 6 weeks later. Silas Vance resigned from Praxon and paid a personal fine of $15 million to settle the defamation and intimidation claims. He was barred from serving as an officer of a public company for 5 years. David Royce, the whistleblower, was charged with perjury and released on bail, his testimony now wholly discredited. Lucas Thorne dropped the remaining civil claims against Praxon in exchange for a public apology and a joint donation of $5 million to the Integrity Fellowship. The merger was officially dead, but Ethelgard's stock, buoyed by the positive publicity and Thorne's decisive victory, climbed to a 2-year high. For Maria, the resolution was quieter but more profound. The day after the settlement, she sat in Thorne's office again. The view was the same, but the atmosphere was different. The tension had bled away. "I want you to know," Thorne said, "the fellowship director position is yours, regardless of what you choose next. The salary, the benefits, they're not contingent on anything. They're yours." Maria nodded. "Thank you, but I've been thinking. I don't know the first thing about running a scholarship program." "You'll learn, or you can choose another role in the company. Your integrity is the one commodity this place needs more of. Name it." Maria looked out at the city. She thought of the long walk, the blisters, the fear. She thought of her father. "I want to work in your corporate security division." Thorne blinked, surprised. "Security?" "Yes, in the vetting and ethics division. I spent 3 days being investigated, having my every move scrutinized. I know what it feels like to be on that side, and I know what real honesty looks like, even when it's messy and hesitant. I think I could help you find people who have it and protect the company from people who don't." It was the last thing Thorne expected, but as he considered it, a smile touched his lips. It was perfect. "Done. You'll report directly to the head of security. Training starts next month." The final surprise came not from Thorne, but from the past. As Maria was cleaning out her old apartment with her sister, she found a box of her father's belongings she'd never properly sorted. Beneath some old tools and faded work shirts, she found a sealed envelope. It was addressed to her in her father's handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter and a faded newspaper clipping. The clipping was from the business section, dated over 20 years ago. The headline read, "Young developer Thorne credits foreman's integrity for saving project." There was a quote from Lucas Thorne, then in his late 20s. "Eduardo Santos didn't just do his job. He did the right thing at personal risk. That's the kind of man you build a future on." The letter was short. "My querida Maria, if you are reading this, I am gone. Do not be sad. I have lived a good life because I chose to live an honest one. I once worked for a man who promised to remember that. I hope he does. But remember, you do not need anyone's promise to be great. You already are. Con to do my ama, papi." Maria sat on the floor of the empty apartment and cried. Her father had known Thorne. He had believed in him. And in the end, his daughter had reminded Thorne of the man he'd promised to be. The circle was closed. Maria Santos started her new role at Ethelgard Solutions 4 weeks later. Carlos thrived in a new school, his tuition covered by the fellowship that bore his grandfather's name. The public glare faded, leaving behind a changed life, built not on a lucky break, but on a choice that echoed through boardrooms and courtrooms all the way back to a father's faith. The story of the wallet was over, but the story of the choice and everything it set in motion was just beginning. So what does this story tell us? Beyond the satisfying arc of a life transformed, it brings us back to that strange, counterintuitive finding from the Global Honesty Study. The researchers concluded that civic honesty is not driven by financial incentive. It is driven by something more profound, the desire to see oneself as a good person. Maria Santos, in her moment of maximum temptation and maximum need, chose the path that let her look at her son and herself in the mirror. That choice, made on a dusty curb, did not just return a wallet. It recalibrated a billionaire's moral compass. It exposed corporate corruption. It honored a decades-old debt. And it forged a new future for a family. We often think of integrity as a static quality, a trait you either have or you don't. But the science and this story show us it's a decision, a series of choices, often made alone, under pressure. Maria's honesty was not a grand, heroic gesture. It was a quiet, painful victory over circumstance, and that is the kind of victory that echoes. Lucas Thorne did not hire Maria because she was lucky. He hired her because in a world of polished resumes and calculated loyalties, she possessed the one unfakeable credential, proven character. In the end, her honesty was not a cost. It was the most valuable asset in the room. This narrative touches a universal nerve because it asks a fundamental question we all wrestle with. What is our price? What is the line we will not cross, even when crossing it seems like the only way to survive? Maria's story suggests that the line we defend, especially when it's hardest to defend, is the very thing that defines not just our character, but our destiny. Her journey from a cleaning cart to a corporate security office is a modern parable. It reminds us that the most powerful circuits in our global economy are not made of silicon, but of trust. And that trust is built, transaction by transaction, by individuals who choose to do the right thing, even when no one is watching. Before we go, I want to ask you, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? If you believe that a single act of integrity can still change the trajectory of a life, a company, even an entire community, then let's keep this conversation going. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story reminded you of the power of a simple choice, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because in a noisy world, we need these reminders that our choices matter, that our character is our currency, and that sometimes the longest walk home is the one that leads you to where you were always meant to be. Thank you for watching.